Hit record. Hi, it's Dr. Doug Curtis.
And Lucy Curtis from Dyslexic and Unstoppable. Our mission is to help dyslexics rediscover their inner power.
And thanks a lot to everybody for coming on and hearing about reading issues and self-esteem. We're really kind of excited about this webinar because this is kind of something that's dear to our hearts, something that we really believe in.
Right.
So I just want to tell you a basic general outline. We're going to talk for 10 or 15 minutes or so. We have some questions that we did a survey of parents to see what questions, what problems their kids had with self-esteem. And we did we asked a bunch of questions, and there was a bunch of questions on there that people had. So we'll talk about some of those. And then, of course, we'll leave time for people's questions at the end. And one thing I want to say, and I'll put this into the chat, is we're going to have a little contest like we do in a lot of our webinars. If you tweet out to your friends hashtag I'll do it as writing here, self-esteem webinar. We're going to pick a winner tomorrow, and we'll announce it on our Facebook fan page. You can choose one of our courses from the book there, from our website. So anyway, so we're talking about self-esteem. And why did we even bring this question up?
Because when you're struggling, right, you have learning issues and writing issues and things like that, sometimes you don't feel worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't feel worthy, it's even harder to put in the effort to see that there's parts of you that you are successful, but you don't see it when you're struggling, right?
Right. Yeah, I think that's a big thing, is especially when I always say stuck in the middle of it, in that where we were in first grade, towards the end of first grade, when we knew he was struggling, we knew something was going on, we just weren't sure what it was. We didn't know it was dyslexia at that point. And then towards the end of first grade, where they hit us with that ton of bricks, where they're talking about him repeating, and we're like, whoa, So we know that when you're in that, and especially for a child when they're in that it can really hurt their self-esteem. I mean, he even said to us once or twice, how come Cookie, he calls our younger daughter Cookie, how come Cookie can
right, she was catching up
with him?
And she's 21 months younger, and it got to that point that she was catching up on everything, reading especially, and sports and all these things that we were doing, taekwondo, right? And so it was really stressing him out, right? So he had to find himself and figure out what he was good at also,
Right. And we'll go through some of that in a bit. I think the other thing about it is kids with dyslexia, we expect them to have to do a lot that other kids don't have to do. So a lot of kids, when they come home from school, they have their 1 hour or 2 hours of homework, whatever it is, and that's it. And then they can go play, they can go do whatever they want. Kids with dyslexia have, reading classes. Sometimes they go to speech classes. Sometimes they have to get fine motor help.
Math classes, and then you have to, and doing a homework that somebody takes them 15 minutes, it can take an hour.
Right.
So all this energy that you have to put into it, it's very stressful.
Yeah, and I think you can probably imagine, how your child has felt with their self-esteem and that kind of thing. So let's talk a little bit about some of the ways that we've helped improve our son's self-esteem and how we've talked about this. I mean, we've talked about this on our some of these on our videos, in our books, right? Sometimes in our talks that we've given. I think one of our biggest things we advocate is to focus on their strengths.
Yes.
Right. So much of kids with dyslexia, they're told you can't do this right. You don't read very well. You're not very good at math.
Can't tie your shoes.
You can't tie your shoes. You can't, so many things. And that's where their self-esteem can be hurt. And yet there is always something they're great at. Right. So what did we do with our son with that?
Well, we were looking at things that he would, when they have free time, what do they gravitate towards? So our son, it was Legos and engineer books and building things. So that was something that we could tell that he really loved, and it made him feel good about himself. So when he did that, he could see, okay, I'm good at this and I enjoy this. So that's why we knew where his strengths were
Mm-hmm.
in engineering and
Right.
math and things like that, you know.
Right. And there were times we had to actually focus, like let him know that too, because I can remember, like we were talking before, when he was stressed out that his little sister was catching up with the reading, we had to let him know, and not in a competitive way, but just in a way
A
of showing
reminder.
that his he's great at math, he's great at engineering, he's great at figuring things out. To this day, he still loves Legos, and I'll sometimes he'll get stuck on something, or he used to when he was younger, and he'll come and ask me to help him, and I'll always come over and I'll be like, how can you even look at it this way? Because he'll have the thing he's building one way, and he'll have the instructions flipped completely around backwards.
Mm-hmm.
But in his amazing dyslexic 3D mind, he can see that, and he doesn't. That doesn't affect him. I'm not dyslexic, so for me, I need it straight on. The way it's supposed to be. Um, Another thing we always talk about is remembering the power of words.
That's a big one for me.
Yeah. So what do we mean by that?
Well, dyslexia has got so much charge to it, just the word itself, right? So, I used to be a pediatric nurse, you're a pediatrician, you can be all these wonderful things, and then, you can be in denial, 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 you don't get it, and then all of a sudden you're like trying to figure out what's going on, and then they say, oh, he's dyslexic, and you're like, oh no, that's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
And but eventually when you get to the point, okay, what's the word? The word is just there to put a category of, okay, what kind of services that they can get, what can we do with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a category to figure out how to help them. So then you can take the charge off of that and say, okay, with because you have dyslexia, then you can get these services to help you with this, and then we can do that. And then it's just like, if we can approach it in a different way and say, okay, because you have dyslexia, you can also do things that other kids are not necessarily as good at, like the 3D thinking and things like that, so that you can not just look at it as a struggle,
Right.
right?
Right.
So you can say, well, like our son, he was like, we always talk about it, when he got his IQ test done, he was more afraid to not be dyslexic and be just normal,
Right.
than the other way around, because for him it wasn't that, it was like, oh, you have to be, but he had realized that there is something. And I know a lot of people freak out that there's like, it's not a gift and I'm struggling and all that stuff, and he struggled for a long time, but he also knew that there, and he saw, and then we talked about it, and he then he started to realize it when other people would say, oh wow, your son is really smart, and he would
Mm-hmm.
hear it from other people.
Mm-hmm.
He just started to realize that there was something that he was really good at.
Right.
That sometimes, like, the teachers started to say, wow, he's really smart with this, and he gets things that I don't even get.
Mm.
So then, it turns it around and
Right.
makes it okay.
Yeah. I think of, actually, you brought up, people sometimes look at dyslexia and they think, oh, that's not a gift, right? It's a struggle or whatever. And it reminds me of that man on Facebook, right? There was a man on
He's
Facebook
upset,
who
yeah.
was dyslexic and probably in his middle age, and he was frustrated and he was angry that people were calling it a gift. And a lot of people agreed with him. Oh, you're right, it is just a struggle. There were people that tried to disagree with him. And I remember you just said, I feel your pain. I'm with you. I understand it. And I think that understanding, that remembering the power of your words, that your words can be used to inspire your child.
Well, what I was saying is I hear you that you're struggling, but I also know that you're worthy,
Right.
right? And he was like, all he put is like.
Right.
Everybody would, there was other people who were like, no, you don't understand what he's saying, but he got it.
Yeah.
He just put, thank you.
Right. Right.
He just needed to be heard.
Right.
Right.
So I think that's a big thing. And when you do have to, talk about challenges or whatever, to remember the power of words, and remember that, especially coming from a parent or a teacher, or, me as a doctor, our words really stick in our kids, right? And when we say to them, you're great at this, or I'm really proud of you, and that your hard work really paid off, that really sticks with them,
Yeah.
So another thing we talked about actually in a video once, was connecting the dots.
Mm.
So how does connecting the dots, that we call it, how does that help kids with dyslexia?
Well, the first word that comes to mind is early detection,
Right.
right? So if you can, because when I remember, like when he was even 18 months old, there was language issues, right? So I'm French, and then we're like, oh, it's because I'm French. I talk to them in French and in English and all these things. But eventually, when we decided to write the book, I went back to all my report cards and all the teachers' comments that he also had, even from preschool
Mm-hmm.
and kindergarten and daycare. And I wanted to look to see what was said, and there's all these little connections that we don't make. And then if we can, and in the book we did write a whole bunch of them that are connected, like early crawler, right? So
Yeah.
when he was 5 months old, I would be at a play date and everybody was sitting there and the child there are not moving and he is gone,
Right.
right? So, but you think, oh, that's cute and it's funny, but it is one sign, early or late crawler.
Right.
And then there was, the speech things, and then there was the tying the shoes, and then
Rhyming was a big one for him. Like learning the ABCs. The ABCs are a rhyme that a kid, that's one of the first rhymes a kid learns, right? And for the average kid, they need to put something alphabetically or figure out how to spell it. They kind of just run through that little song in their head, and it's easy. To this day, seventh, eighth grade, top of his class, honors, and everything like that. And you ask him to do the alphabet, it's still a little sketchy there, So
and it's okay.
Yeah, I think that's the other part of improving self-esteem, is realizing you don't have to be perfect, right? You can be great at whatever you're great at, but you don't have to be perfect. And if something, like our other joke is Lucy being dyslexic, somebody will call the house and I'll need to call them. And so she'll call me at the office and she'll say, the plumber called, can you please call them back? The number is, 1234. And I'll say, what's the real number? Because she's usually inverted a number. Well, you could get really upset about that, really frustrated with that, whatever. But
yeah, but
it doesn't change anything.
You have to accept some parts of it, and you just say, it's part of who I am, and now we just say dinner, diner, whatever. Now I figured it out. You have more dinners than diners, so but in the end, it doesn't. It's not. You have to be fixed completely, and nothing wrong, and nobody's perfect in the first place. And second of all, there's plenty of things that I can delegate, that I can, that I don't care to do, even if I could do them perfectly. I don't really care. So what is it I'm going to focus on? The things that I can do or the things I can't do, right? Or our son, he's like, again, doing really great in school, and he's gotten all the services that he's going to get. And at this point, he still struggles with some of the spelling, and it's okay. Right. And when we have to talk about it, we talk about it. And when we don't need to, we don't talk about it. And he's aware of it. And he's like, I tried my best. I done my best. I studied, and this is how it came out, and that's it. And move on to with your life.
Right, exactly. I think there's another one that we had listed here: get around like-minded people. And by this we mean get around like-minded kids, right?
Right.
And this is a big one, because especially when they're in that early time and they see their friends, it's reading time, it's quiet time. Their friends hit a book and are going right through it and whatever, and they're the only ones struggling. And they're like, why am I the only one struggling? Why am I the only one that has to do reading classes afterwards? Why do I have to go to speech class and nobody else does? They can feel really alone. Right. So getting around other kids who are dyslexic has the benefit of just like letting them know there's other kids like them out there, right? Plus, it's kind of cool because we always talk about there's a camp near us. It's called Eli Whitney Camp, and it's basically an engineering camp. It's the director is actually dyslexic himself, and he has all these great projects there. But you go there, and probably instead of 15 to 20% of the population being dyslexic, probably 50 to 80% are dyslexic.
But when we went there, we didn't even know. Like, we didn't go there because he was dyslexic. We went there because it's a really cool camp.
Right.
And then we realized as we were doing the book and all that stuff that, oh, wait a minute, he's dyslexic. And our kid would love the interactions he would get with other people. And then everybody started talking, and it's like, oh, you're dyslexic, oh, you're dyslexic, oh, really? And then it takes the charge off, right?
Right, exactly. So you start to see other kids, and maybe you see kids who are doing well, and despite their dyslexia or with their dyslexia, and you're like, okay, it's possible now. I can see the possibility, right? Plus, I think that's also a great way, since kids with dyslexia or people with dyslexia are so creative. That's a great way for their minds, that creativity, to really start to fly around the great ideas and that kind of thing. And that also ties into one last thing I'd like to talk about before we get into some of the questions that people were asking. And that is, from us as parents, is to believe in their greatness, right? To really stand with, even when your teachers may be telling you, oh, your kid's not doing so well, or, there's this issue or that issue, or even when there's a behavioral issue at school, or there seems to be ADHD problems, to really just stand and realize they're great just the way they are, right? And just that belief in them. I mean, even though our son said that one time, oh, you always tell me I'm smart, but when I heard it from somebody else, then I really believed it. I think that the fact that he always knew that we always felt he was smart helped, right? So that belief really, really helped. So if anybody has any questions about self-esteem or ways to help their kids or whatever, you can type them in the chat there. We did get a bunch of questions on the survey we did. Actually, let me see if I can just show you the survey. You can see some of the things that we had. First of all, on this thing, we just asked how much of a difficulty is reading affected a child's self-esteem, and it's pretty varied, but at least some very much, and a fair amount. I mean, 45% said profoundly. So it is something that's profound. They were worried about not keeping up with the other kids, not feeling smart, feeling nervous about like reading in front of other kids and that kind of thing. Right. So, but the questions that we got, let's see. So some of them were, one girl said, my child hates school because she thought she wasn't smart like the rest of the kids. And she's had teachers who don't know what being dyslexic is. But what do you say to the parent who says, my kid's starting to wonder if she's not smart?
Well, the thing is, we have to know that, I know friends of mine who are teachers, who've been teachers for 25 years, and they didn't know about dyslexia, right, because it's not really taught. So one of our main goal is to teach the parents and the teachers the early signs of dyslexia so that they can be aware of it. Like, we go to this amazing school, and they're like, the teachers were like, tell us more, we want to know more, we want to understand. So I know it's not like that everywhere, but if we can bring it up, if we can, as a parent, trying to connect the dots and then bring it to the teacher and explain, like sometimes I would get a feeling like when my son was in school, they would say, okay, so this is happening, but I could feel that it was like, okay, this may be happening, but it's related to something else. Right. So like the fidgety, they were like, oh, he's so fidgety, so fidgety. And I was like, okay, well, when is he fidgety? Is he fidgety all the time? And I was like, and then I would say, well, it's not happening at home. Why is it happening at school? And when is it happening at school? So these are all the things that you can eventually work together and say, okay, this is really the symptoms associated with dyslexia. And then if you can have the teacher start to understand what you're talking about, then maybe the child will not be put in that position of, now that the teacher know that he or she is struggling with oral reading, then the teacher will put that
them on the spot, right?
Exactly. You know what I mean? So that there's like this communication that, it takes a while. It took 4 years to really get to the results. So, and then when you first start, the results are not there because they're just starting. So it takes a long, long time. But at the same time, if we keep encouraging them and reminding them of what they are good at, because there's always something that they're really good at. That is the big thing. If you can say, okay, you're really good at sports. Let's spend a lot of time, in that positive environment as you're going through this.
Right. Exactly. And like one of the other techniques we talk about is breaking things up into little pieces. So you have to learn your math facts this week. We'll do 10 minutes a day. You get through those 10 minutes each day for those 5 days, and you love coloring. Saturday morning, we'll spend 2 hours just coloring you and me, right? Or you're a sports fanatic. Saturday morning, we'll go out and we'll throw the ball, whatever. So they get that chance to do something they love, and they get enough chance to do a little bit at a time. And they start to then eventually over time start to see some progress. And then that helps improve their self-esteem, right? Somebody has a question here about the camp. The camp is in Connecticut here. It's called Eli Whitney, like the guy who invented the cotton gin camp.
Museum.
It's through, yeah, from the museum. And it's here in Connecticut. If you can make it here, I'm sure they'd love to have you. There were a couple people who talk about it would be nice if educators could teach other kids at the class about different learning challenges and that kind of thing. And this goes back to the power of words and helping kids remember the power of words, and that, mean words that one child says to another stick with that child. But I think one thing that we would say is I totally agree. I totally agree that we should educate teachers, we should educate other kids. At the same time, we can't change the world, right? Like we can't change the whole world all at once. So what can you do? Well, one thing we did is we gave our son, we call him the Teflon guy because stuff just bounces off of him. And I think that letting your child know, and we parents say this, but kind of repeating it over and over, that when someone says something, it really has very little to do with you. It more has to do with what they're dealing with. So if some other child says something mean to your child, just letting them know that that's really not about you. That's about that other child. That other child doesn't feel good about himself.
It thinks about the book with Miguel, the 4 Agreements. Mm-hmm. And we've listened to that with our children. Like I used to drive all the time to school, and I listened to an audiobook. And so our kids would listen to it. And there's 4 agreements, and it's like, not taking things personally and things like that. And it's really empowering to realize, it took me a long time to understand that when somebody would be mean to me or say something mean to me, and like, oh, I can't understand what you're saying, right? I've heard that a gazillion times, and I would, and it would frustrate me a lot. And then eventually I realized it's about them more than about me, the way that I feel about it, right? It in the end, it's not going to change who I am, right? But if I can find a way to look at it in a different way, then I will have a less of a reaction to it.
Right.
So then, like the 4 Agreements are a really, really cool book to have with your kid. I mean, when they're little, it's harder, but when they were like, last year we were reading it. And so my daughter was 10, and they were like, and be impeccable with your words, right? So, we are the role models, right? So if I did something or said something and my kids would remind me, then it's like there's this cycle or safe area in our house that we talk about things and do things, that we talk about the philosophy or the psychology of why is it that people do what they do. Like sometimes they could be stressed out, or they don't understand something, or they misunderstand what dyslexia is actually about. So then we have these conversations.
Right. I think that also that whole thing of being impeccable with your words, which means basically, say what you mean, but you don't do it in a mean way. You're impeccable. You don't say things that are going to hurt somebody else for the purpose of hurting somebody else. And I think that one of the ways that you can help your child develop that attitude is, like you said, through modeling. In other words, you be as impeccable with your words as you can. But then the second thing is we all slip up, right? It's been a bad day at the office. You come home, you're exhausted. Your kid's supposed to be studying at the table and he's fidgeting or whatever, and you're like, sit down or whatever, and you lose your temper. Afterwards, after everybody's cooled down, you go back with them and you sit down and you say, you know what? that had nothing to do with you, and I am really sorry, and I shouldn't have said that to you. And let them know that what happened, yes, they should have been studying or whatever, but that outburst was based on your frustration with whatever you were dealing with. And I think by demonstrating that to them, and especially with our son, he kind of got that when it happens at school, if someone says something at school, that the same thing, that's mostly about that other
Or
person.
even if a teacher or coach would say something, I would be all freaked out, and he was like, "Oh, mama, whatever," And I was like, "Wow," because he was able to not define him,
Right.
and but it's something that as we work on fixing the issues that we can fix, and getting the confidence in and all that stuff, it's a
Right.
journey, right?
Right.
We say all the time, it's a journey.
Right. And I think that's a big thing, is to remember it is a journey. It's not going to be an overnight thing. And you can get the tools and strategies that help with the spelling and the math and all that stuff. And help get them to classes and work with the teacher. But just help them, see the progress a little bit at a time along the way.
And it's okay when some of the things are not going to go away, because
Yeah.
I have, don't ask me to read a gigantic book, is
It's not
it's
going to
not
happen.
going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with it, because either I will, if I really want to read something, I'll get it on Audible or something, but I made my peace with it, and I choose to work with, but again, it takes a while for us. If we can get to them early and give them that feedback of, you're good, you're worthy, there's something that you're good at, and let's focus on that.
Right.
And do the services that we can for you, and know that it doesn't take anything away from you.
Right. Right. Exactly. So I don't know if anybody has any questions further at this point. If you do, you can type them in. I know a lot of times towards the end of a webinar, people will offer you something that you can purchase or whatever. We didn't have anything this time. We have a lot of resources on our website. I'll go over them briefly with you. If you put in the discount code self-esteem, it will give you a 50% discount for the next 2 days. But, really, we just wanted to talk about self-esteem and get the word out. So I'll just talk about some of the tools we have on our website. And of course, there are all the free videos and that kind of thing. The first thing you see on your screen here, it says 7 steps to living the life of your dreams with dyslexia. This is actually a really comprehensive course where we went through 7 different modules. Each module has 3 videos associated with it, and then 3 exercises for you to go through. And there are things you work with your child. It's about building their confidence, finding their strengths, getting them the help with the reading and that kind of stuff. And I like the last ones about helping them develop a passion outside of school and teaching them to give back, because so many kids with dyslexia are so philanthropic, right? Mm-hmm. The survival guide, this is Lucy's baby, because this is the early detection.
Connecting the dots.
Right, connecting the dots, right, exactly. It's about learning that reading problems and tying shoes and buttoning and remembering math facts and that kind of stuff. These all are kind of associated with each other and can be a sign of dyslexia. And then we have 2 really practical tools for people with dyslexia. One's the sight words, and the next for older kids, spelling words, where we go through a number of different sight words and spelling words and teach you techniques of how to study in a way that works. And we have a cool story about this. We were on a trip with my brother, and of course dyslexia runs in families. So not only is our son dyslexic, but his son is dyslexic, and he hasn't been formally diagnosed or formally identified, and he hasn't been really helped in the way. And I know he was working on some reading or having some issues with spelling or whatever. And my brother, who is also dyslexic, was getting frustrated, and you could feel the tension in the room, right? And then
it brought me back to those days.
Exactly, it brought me back, exactly the same thing, back to those days in first grade, frustration with Felix Alexander. And Lucy said, can I just take 5 minutes and show him some techniques? And she showed him some of these techniques that we talk about in the spelling words thing. And it was amazing. First of all, the tension in the room went noticeably down. and then a smile came on his face and he started to get it. So it's really goes back to what we always say. It's just a different way of learning. Um, then there is the 5 video series there, 5 steps you can take right now to help your dyslexic child. You can sign up for that on our homepage there. Um, then this next one, dyslexia versus ADHD. This came from my practice where I have a lot of patients come in and their kids will be struggling in school and they'll be worried about ADHD because the kid won't be paying attention or will be acting out or having issues. And I realized that a lot of times kids with learning issues, they show up as attention problems.
Mm-hmm.
And so we put together this thing where we went through the Vanderbilt scale, which is the rating scale used to diagnose ADHD. And we went through each and every question in videos of the main questions and talked about what would be consistent with dyslexia and what would be consistent with ADHD. So just to help you figure that
Right,
out.
because sometimes they have both and sometimes they don't. And at the beginning, we thought our kid had it, and
Right.
so he didn't have it. When you would fix the problem, the attention issue would go away. So that's when we started recognizing.
Yeah, exactly.
And now it's funny because my husband, when he does a physical and somebody comes in and the parent comes in with a behavior issue and the kid can't tie their shoes
Right.
and they can't do the
Yeah.
alphabet test. It's really
Yeah. Exactly.
interesting to see
Yeah.
how.
So I know that does include a Skype call with us if you get the whole thing, and we have some sample letters you can send to the school, etc. Of course, you can check out the book. That's Dyslexic and Unstoppable: How Dyslexia Helps Us Create the Life of Our Dreams, and how you can do it too.
And that's all videos, how to,
Right.
and how we helped our son, and what I did as an adult to compensate or anything accommodate, and everything is on video, so that because we're dyslexic, we're crazy parents, crazy busy parents,
Right.
we need something fast.
Right. This one was one we did for just over the summer. It was setting up your dyslexic child's summer to make the year a success. So there are 5 videos you can check out for the next summer. I think that's basically it. So
The cookbook is not
the cookbook's not here. Yeah, we also have a cookbook. It's on Amazon too, but you can get it through our website. And the cookbook is basically all these brain healthy foods where we looked at the science behind brain healthy foods and figured out the best stuff to put into it. But then, because our son, I think, might be the pikiest eater ever, found recipes that worked that kind of hid these healthy ingredients in stuff. And again, like everything we do, it's videos. So you get the cookbook, you get access to a special part of our website, and you can watch a video of how to make each thing. Because the other thing about cooking is it's fun when you're all doing it together. Anyway, that's basically everything there. We'd love to hear more from you. If you have any questions, you can come to Facebook and go to our fan page, Dyslexic and Unstoppable. Of course, you can come to dyslexicandunstoppable.com. And you can also, I'll put our email in here. It's info@Dyslexic and Unstoppable. And you can definitely, send us an email if you have any other questions or whatever. And remember, if you do take advantage of the special, it's you have to just enter that discount code self-esteem to get the special there. All right. I hope everybody has enjoyed this, and look forward to talking to you all pretty soon. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.